Hello, Musical Talk listeners. My name is Mike Shapiro. In this episode, we'll meet someone who is a true friend of musical theater, both to fans of the art form, but also to creators of new musicals. Jean-Paul Yovanoff, last name spelled with a Y for your phonetic convenience, is the creator and producer of Musical Theater Radio. This is a suite of musical theater programs, interviews, and virtual networking events, all centered around an internet radio station that runs 24/7. As we'll learn, Jean-Paul is a prolific interviewer, but today we turn the tables and interview him. Who is this man? Why is he so nice? Why can't he pronounce the word about? Listen on for the answers. Welcome to Musical Talk, Jean-Paul.
Thank you so much.
I would love to introduce our listeners to your main undertaking, which is Musical Theater Radio. So to turn one of your favorite interview devices back at you, could you in 30 seconds tell us what Musical Theater Radio is about?
Sure. Musical Theater Radio is a free online radio station that plays nothing but show tunes from stage musicals, from the musical theater canon, from Gilbert and Sullivan all the way up to today, old and new, popular and rare from around the world. But our main focus is on promoting the creators and the works of new musicals.
Now, in terms of the content on the air, what is the breakdown between new musicals and some of the canonical musical theater shows that we all know?
Well, from new musicals, I try to make at least 20-25% of the playlist with new stuff that you've not heard of. But that doesn't mean you're not going to discover stuff you've never heard of in the canonical portion of it. I love playing shows from like 1964 Broadway that ran for only like 26 productions, but have this incredible cast recording. So you might not know the show, but it is already like 50 years old.
Is this a full-time undertaking? And how long have you been doing this?
It is what I do. It feels like it's 24/7 because it really is. It doesn't quite pay the bills yet, but it is 24/7. So I created Musical Theater Radio about 2.5 years ago. And around 2019, March of 2019, I was running another company, a website, and it just wasn't working. I had pivoted, I pivoted again, I pivoted again, I pivoted again. And when you do 4 pivots, you've done a square and you're right back where you begin. And it just wasn't working. And I wasn't happy and I wasn't making money. So I said, you know what, forget this. Let's just abandon this. I know it's going to work, but people are just not interested in it. So I said, you know what, let's do what you went to school for. So I went to school for musical theater performance at Sheridan College here in Oakville, Ontario, Canada. You might know it as the birthplace of Come From Away. They workshopped it there and created it there. And, I had that experience. I went to York University as well for theater studies. So I had the directing in the background and the writing of shows and things like that. So I thought to myself, why don't I get back into that? My love. I hadn't been doing it for 20 years or so, because surprising to a lot of people, there isn't a lot of money in musical theater. So I kind of had to get real work. And by real work, I mean I was a DJ for 15 years for events and things like that. So it's not real work. I also ran a mascot company for 10 years. So yeah, okay, not real work, but real work nonetheless, paying work. In March, I decided let's start this internet radio station. So instead of being, poor and unhappy, I was happy and poor starting the radio station. So I've been doing that for the last 2.5 years, and it's just been so much fun.
I have to say that if you hit a point where you were worried about making money, it's a strange thing to pivot to making an internet radio station that gives away music for free. That's it. I mean, obviously there must be an advertising business model in there somewhere, right?
I wish there was. The program that I use, the website that I use, you can include ads in it, but you have to have like 70,000 listeners to make like $1. So it just wasn't worth it. It doesn't really help. So I decided, you know what, let's just go for the commercial free version, and we'll just make money other ways. with theater and non-theater, and just make this my, my not a hobby, but the pleasurable part of work.
I was a little surprised just now to learn that this is such a young undertaking, because when you listen to it, it feels very polished. And I think some of that comes from your obvious skill as a DJ, as a professional voice. It feels very mature and solid to me.
Well, and that's the thing. I took every aspect of my work history and my life, and it kind of culminated into this one endeavor. I take all my acting skills, my DJing skills, and all the other things I learned in the business world, and parlayed that into the station. So yeah, it was an easy transition to get going, but like anything, it's taken time, and like a locomotive, it just slowly starts, but it after 2.5 years, we're starting to get some momentum, and we're starting to pick up some steam.
Nothing about musical theater really lends itself to spontaneous gratification, right? It's rare to have an idea.
Right.
I mean, developing a musical is 2 to 5 to 10 years. Like there's never any kind of, let's just do this on a lark and quickly feel good about it. So yes, you definitely seem to be on a similar track. Now, you touched upon your own background in musical theater, and I intuit that anyone who's really championing new musicals must be doing so from a position of personal sympathy. So I understand that you yourself have taken pen to paper and written musicals yourself in the past.
Yeah, I've written a couple of them. The first one was Paradise Island. It was back in the early 2000s, very early 2000s. And it did okay. I got it up in a few places, some community theaters and things like that. And I had a few more written, and I had music. And then the nightmare of anybody who's ever written music, when your hard drive crashes and you lose everything. Yeah. So I have the hard drive from 15 years ago. I don't even know if it works. I'm going to have to take in and see what I have. But it's also written in like Cakewalk 3.0. So I don't even know if that's compatible with anything anymore. So, yeah, I've got these other shows that, I have a few paper copies of songs and the lyrics and things like that. But yeah, I understand where the new creator is coming from, having to get it on its feet and finding an audience. And I thought, you know what, they don't need to go through what I went through. And it's so much easier now because you've got social media, you have the internet, you can just, throw it up on, I don't want to say Spotify because you got to listen to the radio station, but on Spotify and iTunes and things like that. Whereas, back in 2002, there was nothing. Right? You had to figure it out yourself, and you had to make phone calls, and you had to send out mail, and it was not an easy thing. So anything I can do now to make their life easier, I'm going to see what I can do.
Well, that is a lovely standpoint, and I'm sure that whether they're aware of you or not, new musical creators are already in debt to you in a way. And you're clearly of spiritual kin since you've gone through the process. And as a side note, I do believe Cakewalk is still alive. So if you ever decide to go on an archival hunt, I believe you could resurrect your files. So
that would be so good.
FYI. It's interesting that we're now in an era where accessibility of music is not a problem, but from the listener's standpoint, it's really about curation, right? It's knowing where to find music, even if you are interested in new musicals specifically, just knowing what to listen to and where becomes the real challenge. And the flip side is that if you're creator of a new musical, punching through the din, finding a way to draw not access to your music, but attention to your music seems to be the real.
Yeah.
So you're kind of a broker, a taste broker in a way. You're making this connection between people who would like to listen to new musicals, but may not know where to look, and then the creators of new musicals who are looking for a new audience.
That's exactly what I want to do. Like I said, with Spotify, you have tens of thousands of millions of songs on there, but how do you get noticed? And this is throughout time of music, when you had CDs and tapes and Spotify, you make your playlist and you listen to what you like, and you don't necessarily go out and explore and find these new shows. And I find that is a big problem. And that's why I wanted to do the radio station rather than, some people say create a Spotify list, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, no, you don't discover anything because you only like what you like. and you stick with what you like. And that's why the radio station, I play as much new stuff as I can. I also create a bi-daily show called The Sampler Platter, runs 7 days a week at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., which features 4 or 5 new shows. So I play 3 songs, I give a little synopsis, I give a little production background and names of the creators, and you can get a little flavor of the show. You're not going to get the whole show, but what I've also done is for each one of those shows, I've created a single page on my website that gives the information so you can contact them if you do have some interest in the show. So there's, social media, there's websites, there's an email contact. So I've tried to leverage as much as possible to get these new creators known and heard.
What I like here is that you're doing so much of the legwork to organize this material. Here at Musical Talk, we do often try to shine the spotlight on new musicals and the creators of new musicals, but we are not that systematic about it. It usually happens where we stumble upon a new show at the Edinburgh Fringe and we run screaming after the creator, wait, we want to talk to you. Or occasionally someone will harass us about their new show until we finally say, fine, we'll interview. But what you're doing is much more systematic and organized. Now, talking about Spotify and Apple Music, they all have their own concept of internet radio. And I don't know if I think sometimes it's manually curated and sometimes there's probably an algorithm. With both respect to old is a bad term, with respect to both canonical musicals and new, fresh off the proverbial press, what is your curation process and how do you pick shows for inclusion on the air?
For old stuff, for canonical, it's whatever I have or whatever I have accessible. I've got like 350 LPs downstairs, and some of them, they don't have digital versions of them. So it takes me forever to digitize them. Or I just collect some of the newer stuff or things like that, and I put them on the air. For new works, pretty much anyone that reaches out to me or I reach out to. The new works that I promote on the Sampler Platter range from no productions at all. They have demo recordings of just a person at a piano live up to, they've had, a small run off Broadway. They've got a cast recording and things like that, and everything in between. Just because you've been off Broadway doesn't mean you're known. And things like that. And just because you've got only a piano demo doesn't mean you're not worthy of being heard. So I take a little bit of everything, and who am I to decide what can and can't go on? Just because I like something doesn't mean you're going to. And just because you like something doesn't mean I'm going to. So I let everyone decide for themselves and throw it out there and let the world decide what is going to survive and what's going to be, picked up and listened to.
And do you have a mechanism by which listeners give feedback or can send requests?
You can go to the website. You can send messages to me, regular contact. There is a way to make requests on the website. You can see all the songs and shows that I play. We have a song list, so you can go through and just type in and say, oh, I didn't know you had this, and you can ask for it. Or you can just go on our social media, our Twitter, MTR_tweets, or Musical Theater Radio on Facebook or Instagram or things like that, and just talk to me and let me know what you want to hear, because I'm always curious. I don't know everything. There are people that tell me I know a lot, but I don't. I can't, and it's impossible. I want you to introduce me to shows that I don't know.
Is there any particular show, old or new, that a listener brought to your attention that particularly struck you as memorable or something you're really happy to have learned about?
I just met a few weeks ago. I hold a monthly, more promo and promotion myself, a monthly networking event called CPAD. CPAD starts for Creators of Musicals, Producers, and Artistic Directors. It's an opportunity virtually to get together and do networking and talk to each other and share, war stories and ask questions of each other in a safe, fun environment where, nobody's judging you. you're all looking for help. Well, I met this woman, Catherine Keats. We were just talking, blah, blah, blah. And then she mentioned the show Let My People Come. And that she was in it. She was in it for 1,000 performances off Broadway and on tour around the US and Canada. And I'd never heard of this show. It was in the 70s, and it was about this sexual awakening and this revolution, and it got banned by some stuff, I believe. And I'm going to have her and the creator on my podcast and to talk about it. So it was really fun and exciting to meet someone like that and discover a show that other people have heard of, but I had not. So, but it happens all the time. There's always things that I don't know. And it's always exciting to discover these new shows.
Now, I was going to ask you or prompt you about the CPAD conferences, the online virtual conferences. So since we touched upon that, we might as well talk a little bit more about that.
Sure.
At a glance, this seems to be part of your philosophy of helping creators of new musicals, ushering them into the world. Could you tell us a little bit more about how those conferences are structured and maybe what your goals are with them?
Right. So it's a monthly conference, a monthly networking event. So imagine in the real world, you come into a room, you sit down at tables and you talk to people. It's the same way virtually. I do 2 sessions in a day. I do a 9 to 11 a.m. and a 5 to 7 p.m. And the reason I do that is because I want to, again, incorporate the entire globe. There are people in the UK that I'm good friends with and would love to support. But if I only do it from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern time, they're not going to come, right?
They're asleep.
Exactly. So I created one in the morning and one at the night. So everybody from Europe to North America and even Australia, depending exactly what time they're up, it might be 6 in the morning for them or 7, but they have the opportunity to come to one of the sessions as well. So again, like you said, I'm trying to help as many people globally, literally, as I can. Now, these events are, like I said, are held virtually, but not in Zoom. Everybody does Zoom. Everybody knows Zoom, which actually isn't true. When I started my radio station, I did all my podcasts on Zoom, and people would be like, "What is this? I have to download this, and what?" And I had to explain it. Once the pandemic hit, everybody knew what it was. But like I said, we don't do the networking event on Zoom because Zoom is just, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 heads. And how do you have a conversation that way? You can't. It's impossible to have, any good conversation or roundtables. So I have a partner, Lori Glodowski from 35th Parallel Productions. We created the Jill Edmond Virtual Theater. So like I said, imagine you were in a real room with tables and chairs, and you can move around from table to chair, meeting new people. And then once you're done talking with them, you can move to another table and chair. Imagine being able to do that virtually. So you're sitting at a table with 8 people. When you're done with only talking to those 8 people, you move to another table and you start a whole new conversation. And we run it in this virtual theater, the Jill Edmond Virtual Theater, for that reason. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Jill Edmond because we created it because, as much as we want to go back to, real life, the theater in the real world, this whole pandemic is not going away anytime soon. And we've discovered, because of the pandemic, as terrible as it has been, we've discovered new ways to communicate and talk to each other and interact and network, like I said, around the world. And this virtual theater gives you an opportunity to put on, works or, workshops or something like that with people around the world. So I'm really excited about the virtual theater. We're working with NYU's Tisch graduate musical theater writing program and a few other companies that we're finalizing for the theater. So that's CPAD in a nutshell.
Are you planning on expanding this concept to more virtual events outside of CPAD itself?
Yeah, I'm working with this gentleman, Stuart Brayson, in the UK, and we're trying to put together some kind of, I'm not sure exactly what it is because we haven't finalized it, some kind of, not quite a workshop, but a feedback talk where we talk to some people in the industry as well as introduce a new show to the audience, and we can get feedback on them as well. We're not 100% sure exactly how that works. Stuart Brayson, you might or might know, he wrote From Here to Eternity with Sir Tim Rice, and he's written about 15 other shows. Stuart's been fantastic. He's been an awesome guy. We met about a year and a half ago virtually, and we worked really well together. So we're trying to put something together there. We're not sure what yet, but we're working on that, and I'm working with a few other people about putting workshops together for creators and things like that.
What's really interesting to me, and this is a theme that has emerged, I think, repeatedly over the last year or two on our podcast, is that technologies that were popularized as a means of dealing with the limitations of the pandemic have proven themselves to have utility far beyond their original intent. Mm-hmm. With conferences, I assumed given the timing, you were perhaps thinking of pandemic limitations and ways to work around them. But in extending your conference to Tisch and to people in Europe, suddenly you're transcending what's been possible, or at least convenient, with traditional brick and mortar conferences.
Exactly. Like I said, the pandemic was terrible. It set us all back. But it also allowed us to take 2 steps forward because we were all forced to learn this new technology. We all now have microphones and cameras in our houses. We all know how to edit sound. We know how to edit video, or most of us do. We've had to learn and figure it out to just continue with our art and our existence in the theater community. So, yeah, as damaging as it has been, all the skills we've learned once the pandemic is settled down and we go back to real life, we now have these, and we'll be able to utilize them and keep going forward and start interacting with the globe rather than just, if you're holding a 29-hour reading and some kind of workshop, originally you did it in New York. You rented a theater for an exorbitant amount of stuff, and you had the finite number of people. Now imagine being able to do that in the virtual theater. You can reach out to people in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, LA, Toronto, everywhere, and bring them into one place to check out your work at a fraction of the cost. And it's going to be a huge game changer, I think, in the next little while. Will it replace live theater? Of course not. Nothing will replace live theater. Pandemics can't kill it. We've been doing this for thousands of years. We always come back, and it's what we want. It's the camaraderie. It's the closeness. It's the feeling of feeling the waves of music and emotion from the stage. But this is a nice, simple way to enhance what we already have and bring us all closer.
I couldn't agree more. I think recently a film version of Everyone's Talking About Jamie was released. And, yes, during the pandemic, we had the filmed stage production of Hamilton. And it was just these gestures, the high end are so wonderful for letting people access musical theater in a way that I think will whet their appetite for the real thing rather than replace it completely.
Yes, it opens up a whole new world of people who, never even probably thought about walking into a theater. Because I forget the weird statistic, and I can't remember where I heard this from, but only like 25% of people have been in a theater. And for people like ourselves, that's just mind-blowing, right? That they've not been into a live theater before, since we go there as much as we can, work in it and everything like that. But a lot of people don't go to theater. And I think, whether you like the movies or don't like the movies or the presentations on, Netflix, the Hamiltons, the Jamies, the Dear Evan Hansons, the Cats even, people are still talking about Cats. And, whether you liked it or not, I'm guessing not, but most people, but it brought back musical theater and brought it to the forefront once again. So people who might not have stepped into a theater, have discovered it and have experienced it and go, what, why not? Let's give this a try. Maybe I'll go see it. It's being played at my local theater. So yeah, it's this technology and the pandemic, like I said, it's been great in the sense that it's opened it up to more people.
Now, swiveling our focus from these broad philosophical topics back to your own activities, noble as those topics are, don't get me wrong. I first became aware of musical theater radio indirectly through your Be Our Guest podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is and what its relationship to MTR is?
Sure. Be Our Guest is a podcast / radio program on the station. Saturdays at noon Eastern time, I play an interview with somebody on Be Our Guest. It could be literally anybody within the musical theater community. And unlike some podcasts, because I notice, and I do this kind of on purpose, some podcasts look to get the biggest name possible. We want the Lin-Manuels. We want the Sondheims, the biggest names they can, actors or writers or things like that. Me, no offense to any of my guests, but I love the unsung heroes of musical theater. I speak to public relations people. I'm going to be speaking with, in the next couple of weeks, a guy who's working the Tonys. Like,
that's great.
we all want to talk to the people who win the Tonys, but how about the guy who has to be there and deals with that stuff? And I'm more interested in that. And one of my favorites is I talked to a theater accountant. I went to school with her. We went to college together. She's a performer. She's fantastic. She's a director, a choreographer. But again, no money in musical theater. She also became an accountant. And she's my accountant now. And my talk with her was great because she's telling us what we can write off, what we can't write off, things, just weird things like that. So I love talking to either new creators or the unsung heroes of the musical theater world. Do I get as many hits? No, I don't. That's the fact, because it's not Lin-Manuel. It's not, Audra McDonald or things like that. But I'm having fun. and I think the people I talk to deserve the recognition they don't necessarily get.
There's a really interesting podcast called Life in the Pit, run by David Lane, who is a musical director and I think also a arranger and composer. And he takes a similar approach, but with a much more vertical slice in that he interviews pit musicians. And it's a much more kind of a narrow approach, but it's a really interesting perspective because it's one we don't typically hear. It's, again, an unsung hero. In that it's, we rely on their talents for every live show, but we don't really know what it's like. So it is great to hear those under-celebrated perspectives that are often very nuanced, but very part of the musical theater world.
Yeah.
Looking to the future, I should rewind that a little bit. If you look at the scope of what you've done in just a few years, you've started this full-time radio station that has a number of different programs and segments. You've got a podcast. You're making some of the content available in on-demand form. You are creating this conference series in this virtual space. What do you see? What are your ambitions and hopes for the future of all your musical theater radio undertakings and your related projects?
Most people don't realize this about me, and they always say, no, you're not. But I'm an introvert. I'm very shy. I'm not very good with people. And again, the virtual world has helped with that, because if I had to do all this stuff live and face to face, it'd be so hard. I'm very not great at that. I compare myself, and I love it. I love writing book again are the unsung heroes. Everybody knows the lyricist, the composer, but the book, no one really knows who they are. I want to be able to say, I remember when, for the shows that I'm helping. I remember when they came to me and they needed some help, and now they're up for a Tony, or they've got they've got 6 productions around Canada and the US. I also work for a theater company at York University that works with students. And again, they are students who aren't necessarily in theater. They just have a passion for it, and I want to help them. What I look for in the future is I just want to be able to say, you know what, I helped these people. And one day, I'm helping promote the next Cats, or the next Phantom or the next In the Heights or the next Oklahoma, and just say,
hopefully not the next Cats the movie.
Hey, if you made the money that Cats the movie made, still, I would take it. I wouldn't complain if I got that cash. But yeah, it's I don't need the recognition. I just want to be able to say that I helped, did my little bit. If people recognize me, fantastic. I'd like for them to remember, but I could just sit back and enjoy and smile. That's what I like.
And if you had your druthers, would you expand into other media? Would you, could you, in your dream scenario, would you have a TV show? I mean, what media would you most aspire to participate in?
Well, this one's great because you can't see me. So maybe not TV, but I don't really know. This is already a ton of work. This is a ton of work already in the background that nobody realizes. No, I don't really think about expanding beyond the auditory. Live theater and this is good enough for me. I don't need it all.
Now, if our listeners, rightfully intrigued by the discussion so far, would like to tune into all of the above, they want to check out MTR, they want to listen to the podcast, they want to maybe participate in CPAD, maybe there are people out there with new musicals and they'd like to get involved in the sampler platter. Can you give me like a little omnibus rundown of all the ways to follow you, to get in touch with you, to participate in everything you're offering?
Right. The easiest way is obviously go to the website, musicaltheaterradio.com. And that's theater, R-E, not E-R. So musicaltheaterradio.com. Everything you need to know is on there. The Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, any way to contact me. There's the regular contact section. There's the sampler platter contact section, which just lets me know what you're interested in. I spend a lot of time on Twitter. If you want to engage with me, that is the best place to do it. MTR_tweets. And I talk to everybody. I respond to everything. And I have a lot of fun on there. If anybody who's following me, once a day I have either the musical mashup or Name That Musical, which is a fun little game which gets a lot of people involved. We have some fun on there. I talk to everybody. And yeah, just contact me. And sometimes I might just find you. I'll go on social media and just look around for new musicals and I'll contact you and I'll reach out and please respond. That's my biggest pet peeve with creators. They love the word show business, but they forget the word business because they spend so much time on the show part that they forget to, reach out or respond or contact people who want to help you. I had this one, I reached out really early in about a month or two, and I went through and made a list of like 150 new musicals to contact. I reached out to all of them, 20% maybe got back to me. But about 2 months ago, I'm working with one of them that I realized I'd contacted 2 years ago, but didn't respond. So to all of you who didn't respond back then, what's wrong with you? You had an opportunity.
Well, let me turn that around. Are you offering amnesty now to the people who didn't respond previously? Can they humbly return your emails or your tweets and get back in touch?
Oh, I think so. I am magnanimous that way. So.
Okay, you slacker theater creators. I hope you appreciate that I've negotiated this on your behalf. So get in touch with them before that window closes.
That's right. I think you should get a percentage if they make it big because of it.
All right. 15% is zero.
Yes.
Well, gosh, I as I said at the opening, and I mean this very sincerely, I think you are a big friend to musical theater as an institution, and I think especially to creators of new musicals, and that you are from an ideological drive, you're really trying to give some exposure to new material. And that is a big part of the battle that creators of musicals are not often equipped to fight on their own behalf. So I feel I'm just, on behalf of everyone, I'm going to give you a big thank you for what you've done so far and what you'll no doubt continue to do in the future. Thank you so much for joining us here on Musical Talk, and I hope we send a horde of new listeners your way.
Thank you so much, Michael, for having me on and, introducing to a whole new group of people musical theater, and in turn, introducing them to new shows to discover.
For more information about Musical Talk, please visit our website at musicaltalk.co.uk. You can email us at feedback@musicaltalk.co.uk, listen to past episodes on iTunes and YouTube, and follow our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.